We won't have, oh, because it's up and
Yes, Caitlin, I will put your middle initial.
Yay. I need to ask that almost every time I never think of it. I just get mad. Then I stew about it, then I forget, and then I repeat the process.
Can't do that.
You know,
If you don't
it's,
remember.
now that's on YouTube.
It's just so easy to do KK.
Double gang. Yeah. Great, it rhymes, so I know it's good.
So it's KDK.
It's my hip hop name.
Yeah.
If you meet anyone in my family or anyone who I knew before 2007, they all call me Katie. Anyone who I met after 2007 calls me Caitlin. This has caused confusion. So I'm KDK for sure. That's how I was known from half my life anyway. More than ish. This owl is like right in front of me.
Okay. This is the Town of Manlius Board meeting for May 11th, 2022. I am Deputy Supervisor Sarah Bollinger, and I'd like to introduce our regular supervisor, John Deere, is joining us virtually.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, John.
So we will start out with the Pledge of Allegiance, I believe.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We now have open podium, which is an opportunity for residents to bring up a topic that's not on the agenda. Do we have anybody in the room who's here for open podium? Come on up.
Stephen Benson from up on Salisbury Road. Wasn't going to speak, but I just received a note. I just pass it to you for caution. Hundreds of large-scale solar projects are on hold in the U.S. As the industry awaits the outcome of federal investigations into potential trade violations involving solar panels brought from Asian suppliers. So just be sure that what we're taking in is proper and not complicated in any of this might be criminal activity, which they say possibility. I spoke with the CC's renews. Jen, he's aware of this. So they said they haven't purchased anything yet, but these projects will be looked at carefully. So
Thank you.
Can I just add on here? I just looked up that there's an article from today. So thank you, Mr. Benson, for bringing it up today. And their Department of Commerce investigators are hoping to determine whether Chinese manufacturers are skirting U.S. duty rules on solar imports. And yeah, so it is something that we definitely want to ask Abundant Solar about as well. Thank you, appreciate it.
Is there anybody online who would like to speak?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay. So with that, we'll move on to our first item, which is Police Chief Cole. Do you want to come up to the podium so the microphone can hear you?
Sure.
And you got a couple of topics here for the chief.
And I think everybody on the board has received the most recent language change. And if we want to tackle the incentive program first, it's depending on what order you want to go in.
That's fine if you want to do
Okay.
it.
The police officer incentive program, which some time ago. And Tony from Tim's office had changed some language, added some language. There's some great input from the board. And I think everybody's aware of the language of the agreement, the intent and the spirit of the agreement. So I can answer any kind of questions that may be available.
So just to remind everybody, we looked at the draft last time. We've made some adjustments to it with input from all of you. And now I think you're asking for us to be able to finalize that and move forward.
Yes, that would be great.
You'll be allowed to do that under the agreement with the union.
My position is that we're entering this agreement with people who are non-union members. The issue of whether the union should be asked about it is entirely up to you. I don't believe that other incentive programs have been negotiated. Do you know if they have to?
I do not know that, but I do know that at our police committee meeting just yesterday, Heather, 2 days ago. I think,
Yeah.
the
Tuesday.
The union president indicated he was in full favor of
Yeah.
the incentive program.
John was there too.
John, do you want to say anything?
No, other than, we did look at this, I believe, 2 weeks ago, and there was a lot of good feedback on, kind of formalizing this and making sure that the language was as clear as possible. And I think, as we said, I think it was Monday that we had the conversation with the union.
Monday.
And like the chief said, the union was in favor of this, because, when there are open spots, it definitely takes away from their quality of life and their ability to, work their scheduled shifts. So I think, and right now we only have the one open position, but and I think the new language even has something in here about this being evaluated at the beginning of 2023. So, if this helps us fill that spot, and then we can ascertain whether or not it was useful and good, we can double check it in 2023, and if it's not working, get rid of it or change it, and if it is working, keep it on.
Any other comments?
So I have, can everyone hear me? Okay.
Number one. Get your little mic.
So I believe the terms that we have in front of us today are more defined, and that this is a better proposal than it was 2 weeks ago. But my concerns still remain that this will hurt morale and with our current employees and could hurt retention, because if these policies spread to other police agencies, our officers that we train will be more incentivized to leave our police department. So that's why I believe we should be focusing on retention. I don't want to compete with other police departments, making policing even more expensive. I believe we should be all working together. And I do have a great interest in attracting employees that are committed to our community and our town.
So can you comment a little bit on the impact of recruiting from other departments in terms of, is there a risk of officers just jumping around for, every 4 or 5 years to the better deal and just sort of rotating through the townships?
You could view that as a risk. I agree. Our agreement is 3 years in length, so they would have to spend at least 3 years here. The cost of the incentive program over that 3-year period is pale in comparison to what it costs to spin up a brand new.
Oh, absolutely.
So even if we attracted a transfer candidate from a neighboring agency or any agency that's qualified under the terms of the agreement, even if they left in 4 years, we're way ahead of the game financially. And we gain a qualified police officer for that period of time. If they choose to go to another agency for similar reasons, then I guess they choose to do that. And I do agree with retention. We have an issue with retention. So does every other police agency in this country. And I wanted to try to tackle both problems separately. So this is one issue, when retention is really another issue.
Isn't there a step program as well, though, for current officers that we have?
Current contract, I think, has 6 or 7 steps for brand new police officers.
So there's an incentive to help try to keep them there too. So they're getting a pay increase each time. So it's not like they're not getting.
Yes, and there's other benefits in the current contract, like longevity, for instance, that benefits them as staff. That's been in existence for quite a while.
Okay, John has that.
Yeah, the other thing that we talked about on Monday was that I think it's what 6 officers right now or 5 officers that are going through. Yeah, 5 that are going through the academy or field training right now, and I think this incentive program provides a real benefit because even though we only have one open spot, we still are down 6 officers, and that's a real impact on the officers that are up to speed and good for road patrol. So if this program helps us bring in officers that don't need that year of onboarding and just need the field training, if it shortens that timeline to get them on the road and actually being a full town of Manlius police officer, that is a big incentive over someone who is new. Even though someone's new, they can come to us, get the training from us, and be trained here. Having that officer come in ready to go, fairly ready to go, I think will be a real benefit because, like we said, even though we only have one open spot, we are still down 6 officers. So I do think this program helps us maybe ease out how many new folks we have coming in versus transfers, so that when we do lose a few officers, we don't have this year period where we're still not up to normal staffing.
Would anybody like to make a motion to approve this?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve this, to vote on this.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so
it's a motion
Alyssa
to-
gets the
It's a
second.
motion to approve the incentive.
The incentive,
Sorry.
The incentive.
It's
Town of
the
Manlius
police officer
Department
incentive program.
That has been presented to the board, and I am looking at right now. It's right in front of me. It's on the agenda.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. And now could you talk to us about the mutual aid agreement?
Yes, this is a fairly new program, and Tim and I spoke as soon as this morning about this. I think there's still maybe a little more work to be done based on a conversation Tim had today with the county attorney. But essentially what this is, it's a mutual aid agreement, and it goes beyond what we already have in New York State law, which is under General Municipal Law 209 on mutual aid per agencies within the state of New York. This mutual aid agreement would be countywide, Onondaga County-wide, and it came up at my chief's meeting. I proposed it as the chair of our organization because currently, right now, we all are sharing resources throughout the county, and but we're not necessarily following General Municipal Law 209, especially in emergency circumstances. So when I had a permit meeting not too long ago, this was brought up at a seminar where PERMA highly encouraged neighboring agencies, certainly within a county, if not bordering agencies, to have a mutual aid agreement in place to sort of streamline the process. Because right now, General Municipal Law 209 has a lot of provisions to it, where essentially at 3 o'clock in the morning, if we had a major incident where we're either providing services or requesting services, the only person who can prove that right now by law is the town supervisor. And I'm not sure if the supervisor wants to be waking up at 3 a.m. in order to authorize services to either leave or come to the town during an emergency situation. So that's one thing that the mutual aid agreement would do. It would allow myself to be the final say in what resources are either requested or provided. And in addition to that, the agreement would allow our officers, if they leave our geographical area of employment, to enjoy the same police powers, if you will, or authority to do their job outside of our geographic area of employment. And similar to a couple of years ago when we were going to have an incident in the town of Manlius, and the city was prepared to come in and send whatever resources they had to assist us, it would have assisted in that regard too, because those officers could come in, share the same jurisdiction and authority we do in order to take care of major incidents. That's really what it's designed for, is major incidents. In fact, we had a language change because originally the language was to assist agencies in handling routine matters. That's not the intent. The intent is if we had a major incident, we needed immediate resources from neighboring agencies. And without having to jump through all the hoops of General Municipal Law 209, we would be able to do that with streamline.
So can you explain what in implementing the normal 209 process, what powers does an officer not have when they're in another jurisdiction?
They have no powers when they leave their geographic area.
Chief, can I, because when I look at the 209 law in the provision of 5, it says while engaged in duty rendering service in such local government, the officers and members of such police department or police force shall have the same powers, duties, rights, benefits, privileges, and immunities as if they were performing their duties in the local government in and by which they are normally employed.
That's 209,
209,
but that would be authorized by the town supervisor. In an emergency, we wouldn't be able to do that.
right? So you get permission from the supervisor, and then you
If the
guys can go.
supervisor wants me to call him at 3 o'clock in the morning when there's a major incident going on, I can do that to get permission to send my people.
Right.
I mean, I literally have had cars on town line, town Manlius line, and needed to get permission from the supervisor to send them 100 feet into an opposite jurisdiction for emergency aid. Trying to streamline that.
If that did happen and the supervisor did grant that, then they would still be awarded the same powers, like they're,
Yes,
so we have the options of they cross the border of the town of DeWitt and they don't have those protections or powers, or we do, but only with the supervisor's permission or with this contract.
right.
And then it-
209, there's also some confusion in 209 about liability when it comes to 207C issues. And
What's 207C, Chief?
207C is state law that gives police officers and firemen under 207F special protections when they're performing their duties and become injured.
Other questions? Go ahead.
My understanding of the 209 says that the liability lies with the government that requests the mutual aid. But this agreement that you're presenting to us today takes that away, and then we would be reliable.
No, it's actually the opposite. The agreement, if we send Manlius police officers into the city, like we did
Yeah.
when the city was burning, the city has all that responsibility of 209 if they
Yeah.
become injured. But if we send our officers, we absorb that liability, but it's also two-way street. If we request the city's help, they come out to here, the
Because
city's
we're the mutual
responsible for
aid.
their people.
So under 209F. 5, it says the local government receiving police aid pursuant to this section shall assume the liability for all damages arising out of any act performed in rendering such aid, and shall reimburse the assisting local government for any money paid for it for salary. So that's the existing law. And
And that sounds like how
That's
we
good.
want it to be.
Yes, that's good.
then that's changed in this agreement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think, as you mentioned, for streamlining, that's a lot easier, is the same insurance that they would cover anyway, but it
Yeah.
puts our officers at risk of more
Yeah.
expense.
Who drafted this document? Where did this come from?
This came through PERMA, through an organization affiliated with PERMA.
And would we be signing, like, would we be approaching other municipalities and signing these agreements with?
The idea is, right now, this agreement is before every other municipality in the entire county of Montgomery.
Okay.
So like 5 or 6 of them already said, yes, we agree, this is a great idea, we're gonna send. Once we get the majority in agreement, the county attorney is gonna send it around for signature. Once a resolution is created for each municipality, allowing the town supervisor to sign that authorization.
So the other thing in 209, number 3, is that we have to, if we would do something like this, we would have to pass a local law to designate, to delegate.
That was a new development that I learned of today that Tim actually discovered, and I think Bob Durr is in concurrence with that.
So what would the vote be tonight then? If we
No,
don't have.
we're not
an
gonna
agreement?
discuss
Okay.
Yeah, we're just learning.
We're in
about it.
discussion.
And then the other language in here talks about to ensure an
Adequate?
thank you, number of trained and equipped law enforcement to handle and resolve, but it talks about temporary assignments of law enforcement and even our clerks going to different municipalities to potentially cover for people, and that's concerning.
We can scratch that language. Each municipality can adopt the agreement as they choose to, as they choose.
So I think what's important tonight is the concerns we raised and things like that I can look through in the agreement. I am of the opinion that a local law would be required in order for us to at least do the delegation specifically required under the municipal, under this agreement, the mutual aid agreement, to delegate the authority from the supervisor, in our case, to the chief of police. There is a section of the law that says that the supervisor is not able, or if he's not available, or if he's out of
Yeah.
So then it goes
disabled,
to
that-
the chief.
yeah, that would go to the chief. But so those are,
That's a really good point, because I didn't know how big a wall that, that sort of authority was, like what that was.
How many times has the town of Manlius Police Department had to go to the supervisor for permission to do that?
Never, that I can recall.
Well, there was one time, remember?
In Syracuse, you're saying?
Well, I sent a ton of people into the city that I didn't get the supervisor's permission to do it.
And they didn't, but they didn't have any authority,
Well,
or,
Well, so that's why they didn't have any authority.
Right.
But
Armed security guards in the city with no jurisdiction or authority.
But if you had.
So they
the
couldn't
super-
arrest anybody.
No, not even a violation committed in the presence.
So they just were, what were they doing down there?
Standing,
Moral
holding a shield,
support?
and
keeping the peace, trying to.
Yeah.
But if
prevent
you
the city from burning.
had the supervisor's permission, then you would have been fine. They would have been able to.
I'm sorry to hear the first,
If you had called the supervisor and gotten permission,
Yeah.
then they would have had that authority
under 209.
under 200.
Presumably, but again, the liability part and the 207C piece and all the other, if I send officers into the city because it's morally the right thing to do, because they really, really need help, or a police officer, or somebody's gonna get hurt, according to 209, even if I had the supervisor's permission, if they get hurt in the city, it's on the city. So you have to establish an appropriate request level as dictated in 209.
do you think that makes the actual officers more vulnerable, having the
Terribly
liability? You're saying they wouldn't get the same kind of,
The city may choose not to protect them.
I see.
But the taxpayers paid for the town of Manlius police officers to police the town of Manlius, not Syracuse.
It's not for daily operations, it's for emergencies. Like we had the Father's Day shooting, which was 3 years ago. Female police officer was in the middle of a mob of people, and they were literally ripping her uniform off piece by piece by piece. She put out what we call signal 50, which is officer down, needs immediate assistance. Every single agency in Onondaga County said something because it was the right thing to do. But they were all unprotected because it happened at 2:30 in the morning. And the mayor of the city of Syracuse didn't request the assistance. It was requested through the 911 center, which was from a signal 50 from an officer's radio. Now, I'm not gonna not send people under those circumstances, I'm sorry, but I sure would like an agreement in place that protects our people in the event I do have to do that. And it wouldn't happen daily. I
Okay,
mean, this isn't for daily
that
operations.
example is helpful in terms of the unknowable nature of planning ahead for something.
Also, in a critical response committee meeting, we also heard where responses come out saying, hey, we need mutual aid. And then so many people came that it actually caused more problems because no one was talking or communicating, and you couldn't get to where you needed to go, and no one knew what was going on because too many people responded.
That's-
They were talking about fire in that example, though. They were saying that they called it the fire department came in, and that was a communication issue on that.
That also comes down to critical incident management training. We all have. The fire departments should have it as well. It's more of a management issue than in any critical incident, you have people that are called self-dispatch. They just want to go and help.
That was 9/11.
So we can't vote tonight. Are there other questions for the chief about this issue?
In the example you just used, where it was with the Father's Day shooting, so just to make sure I'm understanding this, if in that exact same scenario, if you had called the supervisor as that was happening and said, can I have permission? Then they would have been awarded all the same things that they would get under this. It's just coming from the supervisor and not you.
If that's your interpretation of General Municipal 209, I think that is accurate, but again,
Am I misunderstanding that? a misunderstanding 209?
I didn't think 209 provided those levels. of- Apparently it does. Again, the supervisor commission is the least part of my problem. I can call a supervisor or any of you at any time, even the deputy supervisor, and say, I need permission to send people into the city right now because it's burning down. I can do that, and that's an easy thing. It's all those other things we discussed, like liability and who covers the injury if our people get hurt, and if a false arrest is made, who's gonna then defend that false arrest, you know?
So
I'm very
another-
confident with my people, you know, so
Another thing too is if our, like a car or our equipment gets damaged, then the responding government would cover that. So again, it wouldn't impact our budget.
So it sounds like we have to read 209 maybe more in depth and work with Tim on what it does protect or doesn't protect, and then we can better evaluate the need for this.
It's not a
mutual aid
complicated,
agreement.
it's
No,
not a
it's fine,
complicated
yeah.
thing. I mean, I can read you the section that we're talking about. if you want me to.
Well, I think we're going to vote another time anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
let's-
read section 2 of 209M.
Can you email it to us? Just the copy and
And,
paste or
and
whatever.
it- and it explains the authority of the chief executive officer. So to me, there's two issues that we're dealing with here. It's whether or not you want to delegate, this town board wants to delegate authority from the chief to the supervisor to make that decision on mutual aid at the request of the chief. And the second major issue seems to be whether or not the sending agency, the town of Manlius, let's assume, is going to cover the cost of its police officers or cover the.
If anything's damaged.
If anything happens, versus the liability of the receiving department covering that cost.
And I'd like to, since we have to have a local law anyway, I'd like to further understand the role of dispatching, because the mayor didn't request that assistance, and the whole issue around how the role of 911 in notifying, I mean, that 911 didn't call the mayor to say that this was going
Not
down.
that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
Or is that in their
So
procedure?
I would like to understand that a little bit better, because I want us to phrase our law correctly in terms of responding to who's asking. Is it, if 911 asks, is that the county executive asking because it's not part of the county? Like what, how does that work?
Chief, I mean, to me, it would make, the county executive is the chief executive officer of Onondaga County. The mayor of the city of Syracuse is the chief, that's defined in this
Yeah,
local law. The supervisor who is considered the executive for purposes of this local law, which I tell everybody is not. I
He's
keep
not
saying,
the executive.
he's not the executive of the town, but under this law, he literally is, because that's how they define it. So, not the 911 center, they don't make these types of decisions. They just dispatch based on
Yeah,
a.
they are hearing it over the radio and they chose to go. No one called and made a formal request at the town of Manlius Police Department send officers. They just decided to go.
I don't know how it works, but.
No, either you're operating under 209, or you're operating under an MOU. The agency receiving the assistance needs to make a request.
We're talking about just the normal run of course. Somebody makes a 911 call. I'm in the city of Syracuse. I'm making a 911 call. I just saw burglary on Salina Street. I make that 911 call. Who does 911 call? They call the city of Syracuse, don't they?
Correct. Yeah, the
And then
agency
they
primary
dispatch from the
jurisdiction.
city of Syracuse. So it's not like you're listening to the 911 call on your radios or anything. They would make the 911 operator calls. They have a process in place,
Yeah,
procedure in
it's
place.
CAD system, computer aided dispatch, all based on ADL, which tells you where our cars are floating around.
And if,
The closest.
and if I were in town center and I saw the same robbery, they'd be calling the Manlius police.
Right. Or if it was a high level emergency, it would be closest unit. So if a sheriff deputy was driving by and the ADL said they were closer than Manlius, they would get dispatched.
Because they have jurisdiction in the town of Manlius.
Right. County has jurisdiction countywide, state has jurisdiction statewide. We don't have jurisdiction in the town.
Does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
so thank you very
No,
much.
That makes it 10 times more confusing, but we'll dig into this.
Yeah, so I think we will talk again
Well, you
about
have to
this.
trust me at some point. I'm trying to do the right thing for the people in the town of Manlius. That's always what I'm gonna do. So
So thank you very much.
you're welcome.
So Ann is is out today. So I think Heather, you wanted to talk about pay equity.
Yeah, I'm happy to. We have before us a consulting work proposal to review all of our contractual employees, except for our summer rec staff, part-time staff, to do a sort of an analysis based on putting into doing a regression analysis to sort of illuminate any possible differences in pay that can't be explained by tenure or anything else that would be really logical, so that we could sort of see and isolate out using regression analysis. This is a standard practice. So this is the one thing that in very, very large organizations, this happens sort of regularly, but we haven't done this kind of work ever. And so we have an anecdotal sense and we have a general sense that we think we know which positions are kind of outlying and are not in step with the others. And we're trying to get real data that's an objective analysis to understand what's what, and to inform our process for adjusting any pay if we need to, for gender or for age. And I don't think, because we have so few people who identify as with different racial makeup, we probably can't use a racial analysis. So that's what we have. And we have someone who's an analyst who's proposed this, Corey, who has come recommended to us. I investigated 3 other large organizations and asked for them to submit proposals to us. And this task is too small for a big company. They would like us to sort of buy their software and do this. So we were able to find someone who can do this for way under the budget amount that we had set aside for it. And shared this with everyone and really needed the input and okay from Ann Oot and from Kate Blythe, who are our colleagues who are putting together the data for this consultant. And it's a good, healthy practice and an HR personnel practice that people need to be doing. And I don't think a lot of towns are doing it. So I'm proud that we're trying to truly understand where we are, what we can do. So with that, I will ask if anyone has any other questions about it.
So do you want to make the motion?
I'd love to. May I please make a motion for us to enter into a contract with, is it Corey Williamson? Our consultant for the pay equity audit.
Is there a second?
CW.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Just based on a proposal dated April 28, 2022.
We
for
yeah, and we
a fee of
updated.
22,
Yeah, the fee is the same.
2250.
Mhm.
2250.
Corey agreed after we had questions about how the data would be delivered back to us. Said it would be probably not so helpful to get all the data back in the spreadsheet, but would be willing to slice and dice however we wanted and
Yeah,
requested.
that's understandable.
So that was good.
CSV can be saved as an Excel spreadsheet though.
And he's gonna give us he'll give us the data. Our data's ours anyway. So
They hadn't originally said in a PDF, so I just wanted
The
file.
yes, and we can do that. And then the other question that Sarah had, she wanted to make sure that we had both age and gender, and that those will be represented. So I don't know if that's clear enough in the document, but we'll amend it.
Okay.
Okay, but the price hasn't changed.
Anything else? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, now Rob, it's your day in the sun here.
I guess, right?
Could you talk about the tree thing first and then go into your other things? I'm not sure which.
Yeah,
agenda you
actually,
have.
we'll start with the tree bid specifications. Since last fall, we looked at procurement policy, we had discussions with the town supervisor, and obviously with Tim. We want to try and put something together to reach out and put a bid spec together for our tree removal service, working with our tree commission, taking down our trees within our right of ways, and also working emergency situations with alongside the town. So obviously it's taken quite some time to put some stuff together here, but hopefully everyone had a little bit of time to review it. And I think what we're looking to do with Tim's review of the spec, I think we'd like to go out to bid for our tree process.
Any questions? Would somebody make a motion to authorize the bidding, the tree removal bid document with review of council?
I'd like to make that motion, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I just changed your name. Counselor Italiano.
I'll take the blame.
That's why we, advice of council to correct the spelling.
Exactly.
And I just added a D to Caitlin. Teresa.
Isn't it an M?
It's an M.
No, I think it's a
Others.
Why don't you just put
Now you get really mad.
just put Crystal D. Cassell, because that's literally, I've had everything misnomer. I was Counselor Cassell at Earth Fest, Crystal during the public hearing, and now my middle initial's been changed. So Crystal D. Cassell is my new
Tim,
name.
do we need to put a date on that, or do we just want to put a date out, just as long as we publicize?
Yeah,
it,
yeah, no,
We have to publish this, right?
Yeah, so it has to be published, but after your review, we'll look at the date published, and we'll go from there. So the other one I have, is actually, I think the board, most of the board, obviously last year, we were supposed to have Whetstone Road, the county was actually going to do the work on the bridge, or replacing the bridge deck surface. I just received from National Grid, they want to try and put a plug on either side of the gas main that goes down through Whetstone Road. Before they can do the work for the bridge deck, they need to do that. So they basically asked us with our permit to work within our right of way to do that work. So all this does is authorize myself and the highway and the supervisor to sign to allow them to work within our right of way, and that they will put everything back to its natural state. So
To make a motion to allow the supervisor and the highway superintendent to approve the National Grid coming on to put those gas caps on.
Second.
Elaine? You can watch.
Yeah, you're
I know, I wrote.
All in favor?
the last one that I have actually is Jen and I have gone crazy here for the last probably month and a half trying to find laundry services and using the current laundry service we have as a measure to try and come up with cost analysis of what we're doing and where we are, where we're going to be in the next 3 years for a contract. So we would like to, at this point, as you can see the numbers, I hope you've had a chance to review it. As we go into year 3, we're looking at about $150 over our procurement at this point. Now, that doesn't mean that in the next 3 years, we don't change our procurement policy, which is $5,000. But, you know, with board approval, we don't have an issue with that anyway. So what we found is if we take our current uniform service, if we discontinue that, so now we've got to pay for the damaged uniforms and anything that is lost or missing. So there's going to be a cost to that. And then to take on the new uniform company, certainly there would be the cost of putting all the names back on the uniforms and their startup cost of going with the new company. So at the end of the day, even with the 4th and 5th year, which would be our option to take that on, we're only talking about $500 difference here between the two companies.
Yeah.
So my recommendation would be to stay with Cintas, which are our current uniform company. So I need a motion basically to accept the contract for at least the next 3 years, with the 4th and 5th years an optional.
Because you won't have to buy new uniforms and replace all the name tags on it?
Exactly. Well, what it is the cost difference is going to be way less actually just keeping the company over that 3-year term than it is to try and replace everything and start a new company. It's way more than $500. So at the end of the day, after a 3-year contract, you know, $500, it's either we pay it way more now or just we pay the $500 after the 3rd year, actually the 5th year. So really it's less than, it's like $18 difference after the 3rd year. So we have our options after the third year to go with a different company, or at least look at going somewhere different. So
Hey, Rob, question about this. Do you, right now we have, these, both the uniform contract and the laundry service contract
They're-
broken out?
they're both the same. I'm
Oh, they're
sorry,
the
that's a
same.
typo.
Okay,
They're,
great.
they're
Just to
both
know.
the same company.
Okay.
First does the
Both
same.
Cintas, yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I thought.
Cintas does our rugs and all of our mechanics uniforms, and all of our guys have.
So laundry
companies.
includes your rugs?
So
and everything,
laundry
too?
includes our rugs and all of that.
I didn't know that.
Any other questions?
Motion to make a motion to approve the continuing with Cintas.
Yeah, just for another 3-year contract with the option of the 4th and 5th year.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's it for me.
Thank you very much. Town Clerk Weber has something really cool to talk about.
Well, this is probably more a Tim thing, but, okay, so I'm also taking notes at the same time, so bear with me. Everyone can see the document put out by Association of Towns that as part of the last budget, the governor approved or adopted new laws that are, that we need to adopt something pertaining to video conferencing. So effective January 8th, unless we adopt this, like the supervisor being able to attend remotely wouldn't be allowed to occur unless there were emergency orders in place. You need to stop me if I'm not speaking this correctly.
June 8th, not
Yeah,
January.
June 8th.
Retroactive? I was like, if it's retroactive.
Don't listen to me, I just say words, okay? And I think there is a sample law in there, but I think the most important thing that you have to define here is what you think in extenuating circumstances. I talked to Tim about it today. I really like the language that Association of Towns uses. I think it says illness, caregiving, and any other extenuating circumstance. But basically they say, you can't just say, oh, well, I don't live in the town for 4 months. I live somewhere else for
Right.
4 months. So that is something that you would need to define. And I think what I'm looking for tonight is to bring your awareness to this. If we need to have Tim draft something or talk about how we want to define those, and then set a date at the next meeting for a public hearing, and we would actually be adopting it on taking a part. The quorum, there is some information in there about quorums. So you would have to have a physical quorum to be present and define those terms. So we couldn't have everybody on Zoom. There would have to be someone physically present. But this is a little bit different from before, where if you were going to appear virtually, you would have to publish where you were going to be, and then the public could attend there.
So this allows you to attend via Zoom from home.
Yep, and just not open your living room up to everyone.
And if we do nothing, what would happen on the 8th of June?
You would not be able to do what we're doing tonight,
Okay.
which is allow attendees to attend virtually.
You go back to the old law.
Right, okay.
The old law, which is.
You gotta
can,
be here.
As Allison said,
Right. Or you
you
gotta post
can,
it.
if wherever you are, you have to publish that.
Right.
And the public would be able to come to wherever you are to participate. The other major issue, for those who are sensitive of their appearance, you have to be
Yeah,
on video.
Right.
You cannot just do it by voice and audio. It has to be, the old law says you can do it audio, you can call in, but
Huh.
under the new law, you can't do it that way. You have to be
That's
seen, you have to be
Fascinating.
heard, the public has to have an opportunity to participate.
So because we have the technology that we've installed and people can watch from home on Zoom, it's fine. If we pass this law, then John could have not been able to attend due to an illness, and so he could still attend.
As long as
Because
we
they
have,
can
as
see
long
it.
as you have,
Attend, he just couldn't vote or participate, but this allows them to.
yeah, you
Okay.
can now vote or participate.
Should we go ahead and have you draft up the language that the AOT recommends, and then we can circulate it and tweak it?
I had another question, but then it disappeared from my brain. And it'll come back.
I think from the point of view, just to guide this process, do people have thoughts regarding what is an extenuating circumstance that we want to be sure that Allison and Tim know about? John does.
I do too.
I agree with what Allison said before. What was presented by the Association of Towns, I think, is pretty good. It, basically, it's the way that it outlines it, it basically says, you know, you can't just decide to be virtual, but caregiving and illness, I think, are pretty much the major points.
What if someone's out of town on like a family vacation? Because that's come up where people have been out of town and they've joined the meetings.
I think this would now say that that would not constitute, I really think that
That'd be
what
nice.
Association
you're
of
out.
Towns was trying to politely say is, we recognize the world is different. This can't be when you're on vacation. You could still attend.
Right.
Let's say you, someone was out of town and they still, I would record you in the minutes as having attended virtually, but we wouldn't necessarily count your vote.
Right, okay, that makes sense. I would agree with that. I think we can give some additional thought to extenuating circumstances and let Allison and Tim know what we think.
Like a business trip. And when I was in Niagara Falls, that wasn't a personal vacation, that was a business trip that I had.
I don't think that would count. I think if you're out of town, you're out of town. I think if you're sick or you have a sick child, I think that that's what they're saying.
Why don't I draft it this week, get it out to everybody to review, and if you want to add business trip, add it, and then we'll talk about it. All right, if you want to add vacation, we'll talk about it, but I think Allison's right. I think the concept here is everybody recognizes that you might not be able to make every meeting because people do go on vacations and people do go on business trips, and that's okay. They're entitled to that. Everybody's entitled to a vacation once in a month.
Says the
But-
person just back from one.
Right.
Yeah, I like your
COVID hasn't
tan,
ended
Tim.
either.
Yeah,
But
here we are.
but that's the whole, but we may get this, the governor may extend again for another month or another 2 months, the COVID rule. So this is why it's all happening, is because the COVID rules are now
Explain.
kind of expiring unless the governor extends it again.
This is gonna all be reevaluated in July of 2024. They wrote that in, so I think that leaving the language in extenuating circumstances is important, because if you had talked to us pre-pandemic, I would have said no, that would never happen, but there are things we've never thought of. So that does give us that flexibility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the second one's pretty straightforward. We use a program called Laserfiche to do electronic records management. We have a practice of scanning and destroying things. We have a great New York State Archives representative who actually lives in the Syracuse area but represents the bigger region. He and I were in communications because I've been working with the police department, doing some records management stuff there, which is fun. And he recommended that we adopt this resolution. This has actually been around a while, but it basically just acknowledges that we consider our electronic records actual records. For the longest time, I was very nervous to destroy any originals because I was worried that should we need them for court, that they would not be able to be submitted to court, but that this kind of helps with that. And then also New York State Archives said it was okay.
So what is the backup system? You know, I like when the cardboard boxes flood in the basement, that's one thing, but what happens when something happens to Laserfiche?
I don't want to speak on camera about how our network works,
Mhm.
but I can guarantee you that they're very protected.
Okay.
And we do Laserfiche here in a very specific way. We actually don't even use the cloud. So there are two different choices that you can have here. We don't. And Laserfiche is a great program too, because I can lock down, we've always talked about the searchable kiosk. But I can lock down certain things as the administrator, so if payroll records aren't doable. Sorry.
So I'm not allowed to see.
No, I just won't say it on camera,
So I'd like to make a motion to pass the resolution to encourage digital record keeping and management pursuant to New York State law and town policy.
So I just had a quick question. It says the meeting was called to order by John T. Deere supervisor and the following were present.
Well, then that would be changed right now.
Well, I usually, so just, all those draft resolutions based on attendance, don't ever worry about that. I handle that after the meeting. So we never know if someone's gonna be absent or not, but Deb and I go through and scrub all that stuff to make sure it's okay.
I had just noticed it and I thought
Yeah,
maybe
no.
that's an issue. So cool, glad to hear it's not.
So is it a second?
I'll
then?
happily second, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for checking that detail.
My pleasure.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So now I was gonna say it was called to order by Deputy Supervisor Sarah.
Elaine, can you tell us a little bit about sustainable management?
I don't have the report. Do you have a report for sustainable management?
Well, we had Earth Fest.
Okay.
And no, I'm joking, but it went extremely well. We had a few hundred people attend. We had dozens of electric vehicles and electric bikes, all these different organizations tabling. And this is going to be one of, I think, in subsequent years, this is going to be one of our biggest events for the town. So it was extremely well received. Everyone was just so excited. The weather was perfect. The library was a great partner. Our community chair, Eric Radley, and our committee, Jennifer Staples, and I won't try to list everyone because I know I'll forget people, but they were the two key organizers, along with Craig Polhamus, who it was his idea to really champion electric technology. So it went great. We're gonna start planning the next Earth Fest in June. We are starting a full year out. So thank you all for coming, because most of you guys were there. It was really great. Awesome work on our committee.
I had really good feedback from several people about it. They loved the fact that all the electric vehicles were there. They're like, it's better than going to a car dealership.
It was really cool. The technology was very neat, and it was Heather and I test rode the electric bikes. And then what did you do subsequently?
I went out and got a used electric bike and I rode it here tonight.
Yes, so Heather
Yeah.
sustainably arrived at the town board meeting this evening. One of the most sustainable ways you can commute is with an electric bike. So I learned stuff. Heather bought stuff. It was really, really great. And we also found out, in terms of sustainable Manlius things that have come up outside of Earth Fest, that we were awarded an additional $5,000 grant for our successful community solar campaign. So by the end of the year, we should have more than 25,000. I think 30,000 is what we ultimately recognize, that within a year that's what we'll have gotten in grant funding from NYSERDA and the DEC for the initiatives that we've undertaken. So things are moving right along.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. So for those of you following the agenda, I actually spoke about the comprehensive plan at the workshop previous, which was recorded, so I'm not going to repeat it so that everybody has to listen to it again. But I did want to announce that we were successful in getting the grant for the boat launch at Poolsbrook.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
So
I tell I did
amazing.
not know that already.
So, well, it just came today. So
I didn't know.
Awesome.
Wow.
So we are moving, expanding our active transportation
wow. I
through the
love
water now,
that.
as
That's
well as the bikes.
Do they have a time, do we have a sense of timing?
You ask for everything and then you install it next year. So it will not be available for this summer. It'll be for next summer.
Okay, great. The wheels of municipal
Yeah.
government.
And I'm glad that the northern part of the town is, already had an update to that park.
Mhm.
But I'm glad that it's another draw too.
It's a beautiful park too.
Yeah, it's very nice there. Yeah. Okay. So now we go to the Meltwater Solar Agreement letter. This has to do with a solar farm, actually pretty close to Poolsbrook, in Kirkville to go to their pilot agreement. So at this point, John, do you want to comment anything more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we got the letter. I believe they're working through the planning board process at current, and we got the letter saying that they were, it's the letter they have to send out that says what they're doing, and asks us if we're interested in entering a pilot agreement with them. So really, what we need is permission to send a letter saying that we are interested in negotiating a pilot agreement in partnership with OSIDA, who we previously designated as, I don't know the official term, but essentially our negotiating agent for solar pilots.
So would somebody like to make a motion to authorize the supervisor to send such a letter?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of sending a letter to Meltwater?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. John, if you want to continue to talk about the quarry expansion?
Yeah, so we received some communication from the DEC about lead agency for the Kinsella Quarry expansion. This is I want to call it 11 acres on the southwestern edge of the current quarry. This is not the new one that's on in a whole nother location. In conversations with the DEC, we concluded that there is a little bit more homework to do on that process. It looks like Kinsella Quarry is going to have to come back to us for possibly a zone change and definitely an updated resolution because previously the board had designated a buffer zone based on a neighboring property. That property is now owned by Kinsella Quarry. So it's a longer conversation that we have to have, but I still wanted to check in with everybody about taking on lead agency. In the past, the town has been lead agency on the quarry matters. And after conversations with the DEC, they said, that they would be able to assist us in this, but because it is a local, very local issue and there is some local history to this, it's my suggestion that we do accept lead agency. But understanding that this process will take a little longer because Kinsella Quarries and the town and the DEC have a little bit more homework to do until we're ready to move forward with this.
So John, that means the clock doesn't start until they resubmit?
Well, so no, once we reached out to them, the normal, I think it's a 30-day time limit to get back to them about lead agency. Once we went back to them, it stops the clock really. So at this point though, when we had our meeting with them, myself, Tim and Councilor Denton, when we met with them, I believe it was last week, we did want to at least make a decision about lead agency. And that was how we left that meeting, that would be a good idea for us to take on lead agency for this, since we'll be possibly dealing with a zone change and a new resolution and a lot of other things.
To add a little bit to that too, is as far as I know, the town currently doesn't have an application from Kinsella to do this yet, so we do need an application, but I'm pretty sure we can still send a letter to the DEC saying, hey, we intend to be
Okay.
lead agency.
Okay, so it's not just random, like, hey, if there was a potential
Yeah.
thing to come to us, we would look at
Yeah,
it.
because the understanding from Kinsella Quarry was that all they had to do was go to the DEC to get that permit expanded, and after the conversation, that's when we realized. So we understand, like Elaine just said, we have to go a little further, but we still we're hoping to get back to them with an answer by the end of the week.
And this lead agency is environmental protection, it's secret, right? So
Yes,
can
this
you
would be the
explain
secret.
the definition of what a lead
Sure.
agency is?
So when we do any project, and this is an expansion of a quarry, we have to determine, or the agency that gives approvals, in this case, it would be the DEC, because they approve the mining permit. Plus, we will be involved because we probably have to do a zone change. Not quite sure about that, but we think we do. And we do have to do, as John said, a resolution. Somebody has to take lead agency for the process that we call the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And so if we become the lead agency, then the DEC would be the involved agency, and we would work together. We would coordinate our efforts to determine what the environmental impact would be of expanding the existing mine, the 10 acres that is being proposed to the berm. What's the difference between what's happening now and what may happen with the expansion? So what's the environmental impact of that? We would be the lead agency on that, and we would be working. And we have 30, once a lead agency letter goes out, you have 30 days to respond, but as John said, they kind of told that since we have been in conversation with them to determine what makes the most sense to be lead agency.
So at this point, we're asking for a motion to send the lead agency letter to DEC to say we want to be lead agency.
Correct.
So the motion would be to authorize the supervisor to send a letter to DEC requesting that the town of Manlius be lead agency for the quarry expansion.
Right. And my question would be, we would still have to vote to be lead agency as later date.
No.
No, but
Unless they, if they come back and say, no, we want to be lead agency, then there's a fight over who becomes lead
Okay.
agency, and it goes ultimately the Commissioner of Department of Environmental Conservation for the ultimate decision. But we're not going to get there.
So do you
so I will
want to
make that.
second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Just to be precise though, to your question, we may, you may want to make ourselves lead agency once we start the process.
Because we're still waiting for it.
Right.
And we can't respond to the application until we get.
Because the application right now is with the DEC, not the town minutes, and that's just the, so that's the issue, we're just waiting.
Right, well, we didn't miss the window according to this letter, this March 30 letter.
No, we checked with that, so we contacted them and they said, because we set up a meeting and they're
We responded
corresponding,
in other forms.
the 30 days is.
Because
I'm sorry about that clock.
Because this actually started in December when they sent us the letter saying,
But that was for the
that was for the new one.
new.
Yeah.
That's correct. Plus, we have,
So
What-
easy for the people to follow along with.
the application is considered incomplete by the DEC at this point also because the part one did not include us
Mhm.
being a potential involved agency.
Oh,
For many reasons, that's that the timeframe was told.
And now, John, could you share about the trash service?
talking
Yes.
trash.
A lot of trash. So we talked to Syracuse Haulers recently. The week of delivery has been moved up 1 week. Basically, in looking at the logistics of trying to get all the carts out the week of the 23rd, didn't seem feasible with the third-party company they're working with. That being said, I believe, I trust Dave Tyler, put the article I sent him in the Eagle Bulletin. It goes into depth explaining a little bit more about the process and some of the things we've learned so far. That should be going out through all of our social media and town news shortly, tomorrow or Friday, I believe. But totes or carts will be starting to be delivered the next week, the week of the 16th. It's very likely that they won't actually be delivered until Wednesday of that week on the 18th. Just as a reminder, there are 14,000 carts that are being dropped off and assembled at the highway department. It is a pretty significant task. All the carts will come with the letter from Syracuse Haulers that we'll be distributing that explains in depth more about what you'd like to, what's possible if you'd like smaller carts, more carts, all that type of stuff. And basically, pickup will still start on the 31st, 1 day delayed because of Memorial Day. But we've got a good bit of stuff ready to go out on that. And if there's any questions about service, Syracuse Haulers are the folks to call, and their information is in all the letters and communications we're putting out. And then the big concern really is if you are not delivered a pair of carts, it is very likely that you are not enrolled in trash service in the town. And that is a call that has to come to the town of Manlius, specifically Sharon Lake, our trash and brush liaison. Especially if you're a new resident and you just started putting your trash out when your neighbors put your trash out, the truth is, you still need to contact the town and sign up for service. The carts that are being delivered have a serial number on them that coincide with the house number, so that Syracuse Haulers knows when they see one of their serial numbered carts, that person is enrolled in trash. So don't be surprised, especially if you're fairly new to the town or new residence, that you may not receive carts. And if you don't, please get in touch with us as soon as possible so that you don't miss any further trash pickups. Other than that, like we've said before, the 95-gallon carts for both trash and recycling will be going out. We were told that there is a fee for requesting a smaller 65-gallon tote. I'm going to be working with Syracuse Haulers to see what type of capacity we have that are requesting that, and see if there's anything that can be done to help offset that cost for some folks. Don't know anything yet. But other than that, we're getting ready to roll out. The biggest thing I just want to remind people is, and the letter will say this, is that these carts are meant to be picked up with an automated arm, and it needs a little bit of clearance on either side. The standard is 5 feet apart or opposite sides of the driveway. The letter goes into further detail about that, but just understand that this is it's a pretty big change in the way trash is picked up. The carts need to be closed so that they can be lifted and then dumped into the truck. And so we are ready and willing to answer any questions and deal with any issues that do pop up. But quite honestly, we're lucky to be rolling this out in the spring and the summer rather than in the winter, because hopefully we'll be able to work out a lot of the issues before the snow starts to fall again. So
Not even
that's it.
say that.
Thank you, John, for all that information. Can I ask you, the letter that's going to be on the carts or whatever, I'm sure, couldn't we ask Sarah if you may have it or could you request it if not and send it to the counselors so we can see it ahead
Yeah,
of time?
absolutely. Sorry,
So we
my
know what-
plan was to do that before I got COVID this week.
Oh, no worries. Of course. Thank you.
I think
Any
that's all.
other questions about the plan? Okay, thank you very much, John. So now we moved on to the minutes of April 27. Anybody have any changes to those? Make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt to approve the minutes for April 27th, 2022.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstract number 9.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve abstract number 9 in the amount of $356,209.52.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And thanks to Anne, who's not here, for answering our questions about the extra. Is there any other business for this evening?
Mrs. Deputy Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Anybody want to object to that? All in favor? All right. Thanks very much.